Today, we're going to unwrap the incredible 5,000-year story of chocolate. And trust me, it's a journey that takes us from a sacred being used in ancient rituals all the way to the candy aisle. So yeah, let's dive right in. So when you think of chocolate, what comes to mind? Probably a sweet, creamy bar that just melts in your mouth, right? Well, for most of its long history, that's not what chocolate was at all. The treat we know and love today is actually a surprisingly recent invention. I mean, just look at the difference here. The original stuff was a bitter, spicy, and frothy liquid. It was used in sacred ceremonies and was even a form of currency. Today, it's a sweet, solid bar, an everyday treat. So how on earth did one become the other? Well, that's the story we're going to trace. Let's start at the very beginning, in ancient Mesoamerica, where the cacao bean wasn't just food, it was considered a gift from the gods themselves. Chocolate's roots go deep. I mean, really deep. We have evidence of the cacao tree being domesticated over 5,000 years ago. By 1900 BC, people in what's now Mexico were already drinking cacao. And by 600 BC, the Mayans had made it a central part of their most important religious ceremonies. And you have to understand, it was completely different from what we know. Forget hot cocoa. The original chocolate was a cold, watery, and pretty bitter drink. They would often spice it up with things like chili peppers. And this wasn't for everybody. It was a luxury, a status symbol reserved for rulers, priests, and top warriors. Making this stuff was a serious process, too. The beans had to be fermented, dried, and roasted. Then they were ground into a paste. And finally, to get it just right, the mixture was poured back and forth from a height to create this thick, prized foam on top. That foam, that was the best part. And just how valuable was it? Well, the Aztecs literally used cacao beans as money. This quote from a Spanish colonial account really puts it into perspective. 100 beans could get you a turkey hen, 1 bean for a big tomato. This wasn't candy, this was cash. Everything changes in the 16th century when Spanish conquistadors show up in the Americas. This is when chocolate gets its first major, and I mean major, makeover. So when the Spanish first tried the Aztec chocolate drink, they were not impressed. To be honest, they kind of hated it. This cold, bitter, foamy liquid was just too strange, too foreign for their palates. But they saw its potential, so they started to experiment. Out went the chili peppers, and in came sugar and other more familiar spices. And crucially, they started serving it warm. This was the turning point. This was the moment chocolate began its journey to becoming the comforting drink we know today. Europe's fascination just grew and grew. So much so that in 1753, the famous botanist Carl Linnaeus gave the cacao tree its scientific name, Theobroma cacao. You know what that means in Greek? Food of the gods. It's a beautiful little echo of the reverence the Mayans and Aztecs had for it all those centuries earlier. For the next couple of centuries, chocolate was the ultimate luxury item in Europe. It was incredibly expensive, served only in the royal courts of Spain, France, and England. It got this reputation as a powerful aphrodisiac, and doctors would even prescribe it for all sorts of ailments. Basically, if you were drinking chocolate, you were part of the absolute elite. So, how did chocolate go from the palaces of kings to the pockets of, well, everyone? The answer lies in the Industrial Revolution, which brought a rapid-fire series of game-changing inventions. First up, the cocoa press. In 1828, a Dutchman named Conrad von Houten invented a machine that could literally squeeze the natural fat, the cocoa butter, out of the roasted beans. What was left was a dry cake that could be ground into a fine powder. You know it as cocoa powder. And this made chocolate way cheaper and much easier to work with. And this is the big one. In 1847, the British company J.S. Fry & Sons had a brilliant idea. They thought, what if we take that leftover cocoa butter, add it back to the cocoa powder along with some sugar, and press it into a mold? The result was the world's very first solid chocolate bar. For the first time ever, chocolate was something you could eat, not just drink. Then the Swiss got involved. In 1875, a guy named Daniel Peter figured out how to mix another new invention, powdered milk, with chocolate. This created a milder, creamier product that was an instant sensation, milk chocolate. And yeah, it would go on to become the most popular type of chocolate in the entire world. And finally, we have to talk about texture. Early chocolate bars were still a bit gritty. That is, until 1879, when another Swiss innovator, Rodolphe Lindt, invented the conching machine. This thing heated and slowly stirred liquid chocolate for hours, sometimes even days, creating that incredibly smooth, velvety, melt-in-your-mouth feeling that really defines modern chocolate. So you see, these four inventions, all popping up within about 50 years, completely democratized chocolate. It became cheap, it became consistent, and it was delicious. Consumption just exploded. A luxury once fit for kings was now a treat for everyone. Okay, this brings us to the modern era, and here chocolate isn't just a treat anymore, it's a massive global industry with a pretty complex story of its own. And right away, you can see a major shift. Even though cacao originated in the Americas, its production center has moved. Today, over half of the entire world's supply of cocoa beans comes from just two countries in West Africa, the Ivory Coast and Ghana. All that raw material is then processed and sold by a surprisingly small number of huge corporations. Get this, just 5 companies, what people call the Big Five, control almost 2/3 of the entire global chocolate market. And it is a massive market. In 2018, the international chocolate trade was valued at over $108 billion. That's a long way from a handful of beans for a turkey, right? It's a global economic powerhouse. But that enormous industry has a hidden side. It faces some really serious challenges. There are persistent, heartbreaking issues of child and forced labor on cacao farms. And so far, industry promises to fix it just haven't been very effective. On top of that, the future of the cacao crop itself is being threatened by deforestation, climate change, and disease. So, from its sacred origins to its really complicated present, the story of chocolate is so much richer than we often realize. And it kind of forces us to ask, after this incredible 5,000-year journey, what is the true cost of our favorite treat? It's definitely something to think about the next time you unwrap a bar.